good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, June 2nd, 2018. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on the medical uses of cannabis and the fight to legalize for adult use. And the info comes from all over the world. This week, a guest, a doctor, Dr. Scott Jacobson, who is from... well, right now, he's from Canada and Massachusetts, but right now he's in Nevada, and he's got a couple of clinics there, and we're going to talk all about that. Last week, we played you a little clip of baby Carter, who was using some topical creams to combat a terrible skin disease that nobody could figure out, but cannabis is working for it, and that's where I found Dr. Jacobson. We're going to talk all about that later. But first up, as always, I've got news for you. Yes, that's right. I've got news for you, and this is coming from AARP. That's AARP.org. You know who they are. They're for the older generation. Gives them a lot of benefits and sends them all kinds of good articles. So this one happens to be about cannabis. Boomers who use legal marijuana aren't primarily looking for a high. And this is written by Patrick Keeger by AARP on May 16th. A survey found that boomers tend to use marijuana for specific purposes at certain times of the day, such as before bedtime, to help them sleep. In states where marijuana is legal for medical and recreational use, 12% of people age 50 and older have used it in the past 6 months, and another 41% are considering giving it a try, according to a recent survey. But getting high isn't that high on their list of reasons. BDS Analyticals, a Boulder, Colorado-based market intelligence and consumer research firm, boy, that's a long name, that focuses on the legal marijuana sector, surveyed 11,600 U.S. adults in 26 states where medical marijuana has both been legalized and is already available. As of March 30th, states and the District of Columbia have legalized cannabis in some form for at least some uses, according to governing.com. The survey found that 19% of 50-plus marijuana consumers cite pain relief as their primary reason for using it, while 16% say their main purpose is to relax. Better sleep and treating or managing a health problem each scored 9%. Only 6% of older marijuana consumers said that their primary reason was to get high or stoned. Well, that's good news. A survey also found that most older users have more than one method for consuming marijuana. 81% said they use inhalables, such as pipes and joints and vaping devices that create a mist, while 40% use edible forms such as brownies, candies, and the other 20% use a topical application such as creams or oils. Linda Gilbert, Managing Director of BDS Analytics Consumer Insights Division, said that compared to other age groups, boomers are more into what she called purposeful consumption. They tend to use marijuana for specific purposes at certain times of day, such as before bedtime to help them sleep or before their daily walk to relieve pain. That's what Linda Gilbert said. Anyway, very interesting article. I think we know a lot of that stuff, but this is something that you could probably show your older friends and family members. Also, ARP put out this week, at least I just found it this week, about your brain health and cannabis.
A toke a day might just keep the doctor away, or at least keep your brain younger. That's according to a new study out Monday in the journal Nature Medicine. Researchers at the University of Bonn and Hebrew University gave young and old mice THC, the stuff in marijuana that gets you high, and found something interesting. The younger mice conformed to stoner stereotypes. They struggled with simple tasks they could easily do sober. But in older mice, the exact opposite was true. They struggled while sober, but under the influence, they were as good as their younger, sober counterparts. The daily low dosage of THC also seemed to protect against and even reverse signs of aging in the brains of older rats. Previous research has shown that the brain's cannabis receptors might be related to brain health. The researchers want to explore the impact of THC on older human brains later this year.
I am doing a study on that myself, actually. Moving over to New Jersey, this next clip is from a gentleman named Tom Moran, and this is an opinion piece that made a lot of sense to me, and he's predicting when cannabis will be legal in New Jersey.
Okay, let's talk about marijuana in New Jersey. There are two things going on. First is medical marijuana is sailing to be completely liberalized, and there's almost no opposition to this. It means your regular doctor is going to be able to prescribe marijuana to you. You don't have to go to a special doctor that's got certification. It means the list of qualifying conditions is expanded, so anxiety qualifies. So you go to your regular doctor, tell them you're on anxiety, and that alone could get you qualified to get medical marijuana. And I'm hearing almost no opposition from this. Even most Republicans are involved. The bigger fight is coming over legalized adult recreational weed. And that's hit some tough weather. I mean, you got in the Assembly where you have 80 Assembly members, only 8 have come out publicly in favor. And in the Senate, only 5 out of the 40 have come out in favor. Still, my guess is it's going to pass. The governor supports it. The Speaker of the Assembly has not come out with a public position, but I'm told privately by several people that he's leaning heavily in favor of it, especially after he took a trip to Colorado and checked it out there. And Senate President Steve Sweeney supports it. So when you have Sweeney and Coughlin and the governor all supporting it, there are going to be some arms twisted here. And the other thing that is noteworthy on this one, I think, it's so big, it's so new, and it scares so many people that a lot of legislators are taking the attitude, look, I don't want to stick my neck out. I'm going to first wait for some other people, and I'll be on the back end of this. Anyway, bottom line is I think probably by June 30th, but more likely before the end of the year, they will pass legalized marijuana, is my guess, in New Jersey. Once especially the Black Caucus is satisfied, a lot of legislators will come on board. This is very bad news in New Jersey for all the gangs and all the drug dealers who now monopolize this trade and probably get over $1 billion a year. They're going to lose out, and we will have greater racial justice and less crazy arrests for something that 55 million Americans do regularly.
Yeah, that's a great piece. Obviously, it sounds like New Jersey is going to legalize for adult use before New York. Can you imagine the traffic? People from New York coming down to Jersey? I think Cuomo better get on the board. Anyway, Joe Kennedy III is from the Kennedy family. There was the first Joe Kennedy was the father of President Kennedy and Ed Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and then there was the son. Joe Kennedy was killed in World War II, and now this is Joe Kennedy III. Now, don't forget, Patrick Kennedy, I'm not sure if it's his brother or his cousin, I think it's a cousin, is with SAM, that's Idiots Against Marijuana, I think it's called, with Kevin Sabet, who is totally anti-marijuana. Now, Joe Kennedy was hired recently, as last week, to speak Spanish in a commercial for one of the gubernatorial candidates here, Michelle Lujan Grisham, hired him to speak Spanish, and I heard that it was a very bad job. But she also hired somebody to represent her who doesn't really have great views on marijuana legalization. Here is what Joe Kennedy thinks.
There are a couple of areas in which you divert from your party. Number one,
From the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
you are against legalization of cannabis for recreational use. You oppose that. Why? What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me? Exactly. So I realize my views on this are not exactly in line with.
You'll never
my
win
age.
California if you don't
No,
figure this out.
that's true. So look, I think the part of the impact of when you're talking about the law is to make sure that you get the border cases right. And I do have concerns about what an increased availability of legal marijuana means for adolescents, what it means for folks that are struggle with addiction, mental health and
Are you
addiction.
also against alcohol? Because it seems like those very same things apply.
So I don't drink, but obviously it's okay that everybody else does. And I think, Jimmy, it's something that if we're going to move towards legalization, I think we got to be thoughtful about what that means.
We moved already. It's been moved.
We have.
It's moved.
So, and part of this is the federal process on this, the federal law and the structures on the federal law are completely incomprehensible, right?
Okay.
And what Jeff Sessions and this administration are doing are making it worse. So I just think if we're going to move this way, which clearly, California's there, my home state of Massachusetts is there.
Right.
I acknowledge the fact that, there you go. I acknowledge that I'm an outlier on this. I just think it's something that we want to be careful and deliberate about.
Careful and deliberate. Look, it's working everywhere that it's been legal. There's just the stigma, and these people, even young people, have a stigma that they grew up with about cannabis, and it's sad because there's really great benefits, as I'm preaching to the choir here on this show. Okay, staying in California, since that was the Jimmy Kimmel Show with Joe Kennedy III, why Sacramento should consider allowing marijuana cafes and lounges. The reason, obviously, is there's no place to smoke. You can't smoke in public, so they have to have places to smoke. There's places to drink, right? Restaurants, bars. They need places for us to consume.
They're responding to a demand in the marketplace, and it doesn't mean it's a good thing, but what it should indicate to policymakers is that they need to act quickly to kind of accommodate these uses and these activities in the right way.
While the recent unprecedented High Times Marijuana Festival at the California Exposition was a breakthrough for legal weed, the city permitting both on-site sales and consumption, Sacramento-based cannabis business investor Daniel Conway says more can be done.
People can buy cannabis, but basically their only option is to take it home when they want to consume it.
His idea? Follow the likes of other big Golden State cities like LA and San Francisco, which have allowed marijuana lounges. Think like a bar, but for weed.
Sacramento's long-term competitive advantage is in on-site consumption in cannabis lounges.
The city's made great strides over the last year, delving headfirst into the legal but highly regulated industry, creating numerous rules for cultivation, sales, testing, and manufacturing. The one area city leaders haven't touched on are marijuana cafes and lounges. Although city representatives say they're taking it one step at a time, and this topic is expected to be discussed by the end of the year.
There's a lot of catching up to do these days,
In Sacramento, Giacomo Luca, ABC 10 News.
It's a no-brainer. They're having that same problem in other states. People could fly in from all over the world, buy legal cannabis and try it, but they can't try it in a safe place. They're making criminals out of people that they're making money on by selling adult use cannabis. It's really a no-brainer, and it's just slowing things down. It's got to move forward. Consumption lounges. Also in California, Prop 64, there are lots of regulations. California, some businesses selling recreational cannabis aren't properly licensed, and they're getting closed down. Look, we're legalizing. The plant should be free, and there should be no regulation, but, that's just not going to happen in my lifetime, maybe in some of you younger people. But for right now, it's tax and regulate. And if we're going to tax and regulate in other states, we got to abide by these rules, even though some of them are bad, until they get changed. And we're learning every day about how to run this industry. So recreational, some improperly licensed or not licensed places are being closed down. Here's this report.
Recreational marijuana is legal in California, obviously, but that does not mean that all those green shops you see are legal. NBC4's John Keddy's Klimak. He's live in Van Nuys right now with a new effort to put the bad players out of business. John?
Yeah, Chuck, the moment that this went legal, recreational use anyway, here in the state of California, we heard that the hammer was going to fall, and now it's happening. It's an announcement City Attorney Mike Fiore says his office has been working on for months.
The voters have called on us to enact a law. That law needs to be enforced.
The law is California's now 5-month-old legalization of recreational marijuana. In the city of Los Angeles, 147 cannabis stores have the legal right to operate, but there are many more that do not.
We have filed 36 criminal prosecutions regarding 32 locations and a delivery service here in Los Angeles. And we're going to continue to prosecute matters that are brought to us.
We visited a few of the locations on the list. This location near Satakoy and Sepulveda in Van Nuys was cleaned out, an eviction notice posted on the door. But here on Victory Boulevard near Vesper, just as we approached the open door, it shut. Someone inside locking it, and we quickly realized we were being watched.
You need to eradicate the illegal market, otherwise the legal market cannot thrive.
Daniel Yee is with MedMen, which owns and operates several legal, licensed locations around the LA metro area. He admits the process to get licensed was a tedious but necessary one.
I think everybody's working really hard to get this industry to the right place, and there will be some bumps on the road. I think everybody has good intentions, but time is of the essence here. I think every day that you let a illegal operation operate, it hurts the rest of us. It hurts the whole exercise here in legalizing marijuana.
The city says it doesn't have a number of how many pot shops are operating illegally, but the city attorney says his office is adding them daily to a list of businesses being charged with a crime, with fines as high as $20,000 a day.
Any viewer can easily identify where they can shop at a location that is lawfully operating in the city, and they should only patronize those businesses.
Back live, I want to show you that spot right there where they've taken down all the writing on the wall there. That was one of the pot shops that was apparently working illegally here in the city of Van Nuys. That's the one that we knocked on earlier. We can't say for sure if they're still selling anything inside, but we can say that some customers, even as we waited today, were still knocking on the door. Now, for a complete list of those that are being charged, all 36 of them, as well as the 147 that are legal pot shops here in the city of Los Angeles, go to NBCLA.com or the NBCLA app.
When will prohibition end? We have to make sane rules. That's the whole thing. Anyway, before we take a break and talk to Dr. Scott Jacobson, if you're not up early on Sunday mornings, there is a great show on CBS called Sunday Mornings on CBS, or CBS Sunday Morning, actually. And they had a nice little piece recently about celebrities selling cannabis and getting involved in the industry. And I wanted to play it for you in case you missed it, because it's kind of nice and showing you who's doing what. So here's CBS Sunday Morning.
Hollywood has long been addicted to a good marijuana joke.
So these are our raw cannabis flowers.
And now that pot is legal for recreational use in 9 states,
cool, yeah, this stuff's awesome.
With more on the horizon, some celebrities are laughing all the way to the bank.
Is it hard to find high-quality plants?
Only if you're really high.
And who better than Tommy Chong to be one of the first so-called ganjapreneurs?
Man, I could probably smoke this whole joint, man, and still walk away, man.
It's a natural fit, given he gladly let his career go up in smoke. He and his partner Cheech Marin practically invented the stoner comedy.
Hey, man, am I driving okay?
How much of what you have in this life is due to this?
Everything.
Everything.
All the movies, all the records, my nice house in the Palisades, my Tesla. You look at me, I'm a high school dropout. But marijuana really, it's been responsible for everything.
Including a 9-month stint in prison in 2003 for selling glass bongs on the internet.
Our quality, especially Chong's Choice, is so high.
But now he's legit, selling a line of organically grown cannabis called Chong's Choice. And as the face of the brand, well, he has to make sure it's good.
I'm the tester.
There you go.
I'm the guy that smells it, feels it, puts it in my pipe, and smoke it.
Quality control.
And quality control, all the way.
Chong's Choice is for sale in 6 states, and as with any other product, name recognition matters.
Do you think somebody who walks into a store like this for the first time and sees your name on something says, okay, I know him, I trust this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with me, you know, they know the movies. They know me from all sorts of, like Dancing with the Stars, for instance. You know. I'm quite sure that subliminally, a lot of those old guys are going, dude, I better start smoking some pot too. You know?
So I can dance like that guy?
Yeah.
From fashion to fragrance to beverages, both hard and soft, Celebrity sells. And with marijuana sales expected to reach $8 to $10 billion by the end of this year and projected to double to $20 billion by 2022, more celebs are investing money and lending their names to get a foothold in this growing market.
This was an industry in the shadows. It was all around on the black market for many decades, kind of rose up very quickly. A lot of people were shocked by how fast it materialized.
Chris Walsh is founding editor of Marijuana Business Daily. Yes, there is such a thing.
You get someone who's not as familiar with marijuana. Maybe they're a tourist, maybe they're a local, they haven't done it since college. And they go into a store and there are 50 jars with different strains, and they're all named something different.
He says celebrities such as Chong, Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, and even Whoopi Goldberg are helping marijuana go mainstream.
So that's a great option for relaxing.
What we found is that the stores can basically charge an average of a 25% markup over the same type of product that doesn't have a celebrity name on it. So clearly, consumers are willing to pay more, and it's working.
Grammy-winning artist Melissa Etheridge is getting in on the act from the ground up.
This is my dream. This is my build it and they will come.
She calls these 47 acres in California's Santa Cruz Mountains Etheridge Farms.
It's one thing to use this. It's one thing to be an advocate for it. Why did you want to go into the business?
I wanted to be in the front of this because I feel that there's not a representation for middle-aged women in the cannabis industry.
This new business venture is personal. Etheridge says she discovered the healing power of marijuana during painful chemotherapy sessions after she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2004.
And so they gave me like super duper duper chemo, which was really, really horrible, especially in your gastrointestinal system. So immediately, as soon as I took the first chemo and you start feeling it by the end of the night, I smoked, and you get instant relief from nausea, and you have an appetite.
For Etheridge, pot isn't just about getting high, it's about getting healthy. And she says the product grown here will have strict standards.
You know it's been pesticide-free, it's the quality, and it's measured out. You're going to be able to understand what the dosage is, and that's the product I want to present. Edibles, my friends, don't
There are
try
even
edibles
edible
first.
products like ginger snap weed cookies and other baked goods.
If you have an edible and you're like, what do? Do I eat the whole thing? No, is the answer. Do not ever eat the whole thing of an edible, people.
And then there's the cannabis-infused lavender cream.
Arthritis sufferers swear by this. Women who haven't been able to knit for years have put it on their hands. They cover it with gloves overnight, and they wake up and believe me,
It's that effective.
It's so effective. It's kind of sad that it's not out in the world.
Etheridge Farms is not yet up and running,
You get relationships with them. They're beautiful. The plants.
but she hopes that putting the Etheridge name on her products will lead to more people experiencing a higher level of relaxation.
Life is hard enough. Let's take it easy on ourselves. We don't have to go through life, clutching the steering wheel. We can relax a little bit.
Sounds like Melissa Etheridge is going to have some really cool products, and even Tommy Chong. They're rapping about organics and doing it right and keeping it clean, no pesticides. This is what we want. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk with Dr. Scott Jacobson right after this.
So down before too
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today I have Dr. Scott Jacobson. Dr. Jacobson originally is from Canada, moved to Massachusetts, and is now in the great state of Nevada, where they have legal medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis. And he has a website called thewishingwellnessmedical.com. And I found him last week, and I spoke about this on last week's show, with a young child named Carter, who was having a terrible skin condition. And tell me about that patient who is not yours, but you do know about Dr. About Carter,
Sure. I had heard about this baby. There had been quite a bit of news about baby Carter because he has a very rare skin condition called lamellar ichthyosis, and it's a genetic condition that causes a breakdown of the skin and actually causes some increased thickening of the skin and scales. And these babies have terrible time adjusting, to life because they're literally just covered with this thick, scaly skin. And unfortunately, the treatments for them in childhood are very limited because some of the medicines that we do use in adulthood are very strong and can cause a lot of kidney damage and other side effects. So we can't really use them in children. So when this mom heard about she had been using cannabis herself for many years and medicinally, and wanted to give it a try for her baby, and the results were just absolutely amazing.
So do you know exactly what they were using? Was this a homemade topical remedy?
Yes, it was a homemade topical remedy. And although I didn't treat baby Carter myself, who's not a patient of mine, I did speak with his mom, and she did tell me that she did make her own preparation because there wasn't anything available for what she was using it for. But she used a mix of shea butter, which is a really good moisturizer, and a number of essential oils, which we know have terpenes that activate and modulate the cannabinoid receptors, as well as whole plant RSO that she's been using that's made from high CBD strains.
Okay, high CBD strains, which means there's obviously some THC in it. So is there a ratio that she found?
It depends. It's really, because, she's making it herself, really depends on batch to batch where she's been having people grow for her. So they've been trying to grow strains that have very, very low THC, pretty much minimal THC. And so it's really the CBD that they're using in this case to get the effect.
So you're
but as well as the essential oils as well.
So you're talking about an RSO, which let's call it FICO, because I think our people think of RSO as Rick Simpson oil, and then there's a company out there now that sells stuff called Real Scientific Oil to kind of confuse people. Okay, but FICO, full extract cannabis oil, is really I think the best way to call it. So do you know if it's activated or if it's in the acid form in order to work topically? And will it work both ways topically?
So my feeling is that probably she uses an activated form, and I believe that there's some evidence that the acidic form may have some benefit. Not a lot of studies on that yet, on the activity of the cannabinoid receptors with the acidic form, but there's probably there is some evidence that it has some activity, some anti-inflammatory properties, but it's really the activated form that's going to have more of the effect.
And as far as topicals are concerned, what is your experience? And if it is activated, can people actually get a psychoactive effect wearing a patch?
Sure. Well, in high THC preparations, absolutely, you can. There's a lot of companies here in Nevada now, and I'm sure, and nationwide, who are creating topical patches with high CBD strains and THC CBD strains, especially for chronic pain. I have a lot of patients who use those types of things, and it can cause some some psychoactive effect if you're using high doses of THC, even through the topical preparations. You definitely do need to have some type of carrier oil to get, through. The skin is tough to get through. And so you do need to have some kind of carrier oil. A lot of companies use the oleic acid, which is from olive oil, as a carrier oil. But if you're not using them, and you're just using it specifically topically for a skin condition like psoriasis, which there's been some good data on that it can be effective. You don't want the systemic effect. You want it to act locally.
Right. So that being said, I've also seen videos and people posting things, and I guess there's a lot of anecdotal information out there for skin cancers and so forth. That it's sort of.
Sure.
Have you seen any of that personally?
I have seen some data on it. And that, using skin cells in culture, there's some anti-cancer or anti-proliferative effects of cannabis. And I've heard a lot of stories about people using skin cancers, of course, using topically. In my practice, cannabis is one of the tools that I use, but in my feeling is, you have to take a holistic approach. There's not any magic bullet. I use a lot of herbs and supplements, and cannabis is one of them. And cannabis is great and has a lot of beneficial effects. But if you don't treat the whole body, you're going to have a hard time seeing, you overcoming, really bad diet or, tons of stress, other things that can contribute. Cancer is an inflammatory disease, and we know that, cannabis is anti-inflammatory, but there's other drivers of inflammation. Unless you address those as well, you can still have a fertile area for cancer to grow in.
Right. So thank you for that. So currently you're in the Henderson, Las Vegas, Nevada area. Is that correct?
That's my main office. I have two offices in the Las Vegas area. One in Henderson, one in Summerlin.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Scott.
Sure.
How has the legalization for adult use affected the medical industry in Nevada?
So that's interesting because what I'm seeing is a lot more patients coming forward and asking about it. Cannabis has been legal for medicinal use here in Nevada for a number of years. And I was seeing, some patients asking about it, but I found that once adult use, and which is what the term I prefer to use, the adult use of cannabis has really, I think, opened the doors for a lot more people to just inquire more about it. I think less people are, my practice was never kind of based on, writing recommendations for people to use cannabis. I really focused on helping people learn how to, navigate the cannabis market in Nevada and help people choose the right mode of administration and dosing and titration. And so I still do that with patients, and oftentimes, they don't want to bother, getting an actual medical card. So I think it's opened the doors for a lot more people to actually just inquire about it. People who just really never even thought about it before, but because of the press and so much, the amount of revenue that is generated for the state of Nevada, it's just on everybody's radar now. And so right. I think that's opening the doors for more people to just look into it more.
Okay. In your professional opinion, okay, because I have my own opinion, and I'm certainly not a doctor, but do you think that the medical cannabis industry should be kept separate from the adult use industry? Should dispensaries be one or the other so that people can go and get some good information and care?
I think that would be wonderful. I personally think, I think that there's a couple of things. One is that I think it would be great if you had dispensaries that were staffed with people who were specifically trained in how to use cannabis medicinally. Because in Nevada, and I don't know what it's like in other states that have dispensaries, but in Nevada, there's a lot of great bud tenders out there who are very knowledgeable, who help patients on a daily basis. But there's still a lot that are, don't have the patient's best interest in mind necessarily, or necessarily have the knowledge to help people. So I would love to see, medicinal dispensaries that were staffed by people with medical knowledge. As far as, adult use in general, I think my personal feeling is most people who use cannabis, the vast majority, whether it's quote recreational or not, are still using it medicinally, whether it's to relax at the end of the day or, just to wind down. There's still, they're getting some medical benefit from it, because there is medical benefit from reducing stress and relaxing.
Sure.
So,
Scott, I tell everybody, first of all, I managed a dispensary for 2 years here in New Mexico. Okay, so and that's besides using the plant for again, this year's my 50th year using the plant. So I have some. I never I never thought of it as medical, but people that have been in this industry for a long time, like Steve D'Angelo from in Oakland and Harborside, I mean, he's one of the people that, and I agree, that says that cannabis has always been medical. We didn't think of it that way. But when was that moment for you that convinced you that, wow, this is really a medicine? What was it? What did you read, see, do, where you got that epiphany?
I think for me, it was definitely when the opiate crisis hit Nevada, and I was just coming out of residency, and there was just a huge explosion of pill mills here in Nevada, where people were, could get hundreds of pills of, Percocets or Lortabs or what have you. And I was seeing patients overdosing. I was seeing, people come into my office and getting, I would do a DEA search on them and see, you can, there's a database where doctors and pharmacists can look to see where people have gotten their medicine and how many pills they've dispensed. And, I was seeing people coming into my office as a new patient who received over 1,000 pills of Percocet in 1 month. And, this was it was so overwhelming. And I started seeing more and more patients coming in asking about cannabis, and seeing, the dramatic changes in people when they moved from opiates to cannabis. It was just completely eye-opening for me.
Sure. So let me ask you.
See how,
Let me ask you about that.
Sure.
Is there a weaning off method that people are finding works? I mean, you shouldn't. I mean, should you? Is it okay to stop immediately and just replace the opioids with cannabis, or do you need to wean off? And how should people do that?
Yeah, so I have a weaning protocol that I use. There's definitely it has to be very individualized, and getting off of opiates should definitely be done under a doctor's care, because opiates are one of the few drugs that the withdrawal symptoms are very, very severe, and can be dangerous. So stopping cold turkey can be extraordinarily miserable. Not usually deadly, but can certainly require hospitalization because the withdrawal symptoms are so severe.
Do you have patients? Do you have patients that you are working with? Getting them off of opiates, or do they?
Oh yes, yeah.
So
yeah, no, absolutely.
So well, that's good. I know that there's some clinics that have been opening up that are specializing in that. I believe there's one in California, in Malibu area, and then one in Scottsdale. I think there's a cannabis opioid clinic where they're using cannabis legally in those states, obviously where it's legal. So you're personally doing that kind of work with patients at your clinics?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I use a very individualized basis. I like to use, I like to, reduce the opiates, slowly, and then increase the cannabis slowly. And it's very individualized for me. I like to use, a combination of THC and CBD for pain patients, I think it works the best. And then, kind of titrating up slowly on those, depending on, if they're totally new to cannabis, it's going to be starting at different doses, and depending on, what kind of mode of administration they're used to. If it's somebody who's been using for a long time smoking,
sure.
What's
the medicine? What's the medicine though? Is it the full extract cannabis oil that is helping people? Is it smoking? Is it eating a candy bar with X amount of milligrams?
Yeah, so all of the above, and like I said, I like to use a very individualized approach. So what's going to work for one person is not necessarily going to work for another person for a variety of reasons. I always try to get people off of smoking because smoking has its own dangers.
Right, but it also obviously you and I both know, if we've read the same studies, that smoking cannabis can also increase lung volume and lung function
in the short term. In the short term.
So, all right. Well, speaking of,
we don't know about the long term. But yeah, absolutely, you're absolutely right. In the acute administration can have some bronchodilatory effects, increased lung volumes, that kind of stuff. Does it do damage? That we don't have data on that yet. We don't really know the answer to that. Can it cause COPD or emphysema?
Right.
With chronic administration. Are there combustion products that are causing damage? So smoking at high temperatures, we know increases the administration of benzene and methylcrene. These are combustion products that are carcinogenic. So again, I'm always trying to get people away from it. Do I think does the risk outweigh the benefit? I don't know. I don't think so.
Do you feel better?
The benefit's probably greater.
Yeah. Do you feel better about vaporizing than combustion?
I do. Because there has been studies showing low temperature vaping is definitely safer. You're going to have much less of those combustion products. There's no question about that.
All right. So let me ask you this: when you're trying to get, let's say you're working with a patient that wants to get off of opioids and they've never had cannabis before, okay? So do you tell them what to do in case they have a psychoactive effect that is bothering them? What would you tell a patient?
Yeah, so CBD is the big thing, and that's why. And I try to avoid that by starting at super low doses. If they're less than 5 milligrams of THC initially, and combining that with CBD. And then giving CBD as needed if there is some severe anxiety or psychoactive effects.
They say that CBD is like the equalizer, that if you are having a bad effect, when I say bad, it's bad for some people and some people don't mind it, but it can, there's sometimes a little bit of paranoia can happen with a new user. And of course there's different things. They say that you can sniff the aroma from peppercorns, and actually CBD seems to be the real thing that can equal out a bad.
I've had more success with the CBD than the peppercorns.
Well, I'll give you my peppercorn experience. Okay, so I make my own fecal oil, and sometimes before I have it tested, I might take too much. So I tried to remember. Okay. Go downstairs and sniff some peppercorns. Okay, just the aroma from the peppercorn. So I actually had an experience, and I did do that, and it actually gave me an extreme rush as opposed to it really sort of effed me up, so to speak, and I ended up even as a 60-something-year-old man with 40-something years of experience, I ended up with my face in the rug. Okay, so it's really important that people have an antidote, a rescue THC rescue type of thing around when you're first getting started with this kind of stuff.
And that's the other reason why I do a lot of education about how to use it properly and proper dosing, so that we try to avoid those situations as much as possible.
So what's the biggest?
And it's starting low and going slow. That's really
absolutely
really
low and slow. I had a friend of mine give their sister half of a can of cookie, a chocolate chip cookie, and she had She has MS, had multiple sclerosis, still has it, and of course she ended up. They were laughing for like a half an hour, and then they did the thing that everybody does, which is take the other half of the cookie. Okay, you don't do that. Okay, and then of course she had a bad experience, and she will never go back to cannabis now, even though she's got multiple sclerosis, and people like Montel Williams have been using cannabis for 20 something years. You have a bad experience the first time, and it's just tough to get people back on this really good medicine. What's the biggest surprise that you've found using cannabis in your practice? Something that you didn't read about or think of? Is there anything?
I wouldn't say that nothing has really shocked me in terms of how people use, but I think just who is using it, who's interested in it, has been the biggest surprise to me, because that was something that when I first started giving recommendations for cannabis with people, I worried that I was going to be seeing a bunch of quote stoners who just wanted to get high, and what I found was I was seeing people from all walks of life, from all socioeconomic classes, from all races, of all types of medical conditions, looking for relief, and were just unhappy with what traditional medicine was offering them, and so just seeing that was really kind of the biggest eye opener for me.
Wow, yeah. Now I'm looking at your website, wishingwellnessmedical.com. It's hard to read without some capital letters in there. Anyway, wishingwellnessmedical.com. And on here you have a button that says pot and pregnancy. So what is your experience on what you've read or handled with pregnant women? What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think there's a link to an article that I wrote there for a cannabis magazine, and I reviewed the literature on this, and it's very interesting because people ask me about it all the time. One of the major, some of the biggest complaints that pregnant women have are morning sickness, which is nausea, which can be so severe, can be difficult to hold anything down, and depression is another one. And so we know that cannabis is good for both of those things. So people wanted to know, is cannabis safe for pregnancy? And the answer to that is it's hard to know, but we do have some evidence. One of the conventional treatments for depression and nausea and vomiting are not exactly really safe either. When they do studies for conventional medicines, they do pretty, it's hard to do studies on pregnant women. The ethical concerns are difficult to begin with. But what we see, the big thing they look for is, do these medicines cause birth defects? Because we know that that's bad, right? And so there's study after study has shown that cannabis absolutely does not cause birth defects at all, ever. No reports of it ever happening. So that is a very positive thing, I think. And so most of the studies are really done with women who just reported use. There's been some good studies done in Jamaica and some around the world.
I believe there was a major female doctor that I can't think of her name right now that did a study in Jamaica. Of course, Jamaicans have been using cannabis for hundreds of years, and that was sort of positive. But the comeback by many physicians and anti-cannabis people is that the brain of a newborn and a young child, they don't know how that's affecting the brain. Although, like you just said, there doesn't seem to be any. Go ahead.
And what the studies have shown on that are there may be some increases in cognitive abilities, some visual spatial testing that they've done on kids that they've followed for a long time. There may be some memory or IQ differences, very, very minimal, barely statistically significant. But what they've also seen is they follow these kids for a long time, and almost all of those differences disappear over time. I think these results are pretty positive.
We have this endocannabinoid system that all of a sudden we all know about now. We didn't know about it maybe 20, 30 years ago. And activating the endocannabinoid system is very important, because I guess the prohibition over the last 80 years, when they made it illegal, because cannabis was used for seizures and all kinds of stuff in the pharmacopoeia dating back until they stopped it in the mid-40s. So, I mean, it's been a real medicine for really thousands of years. But now let's jump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's jump from prenatal and newly born. Let's go to the opposite end. Let's go to the elderly people, and we know that cannabis causes neurogenesis. So, how do you think cannabis is going to be for people with dementia and Alzheimer's? I mean, there's lots of data that's coming out. Do you have any experience with dealing with some elderly people that are cognitively impaired?
Well, I would definitely be very, we definitely know that the endocannabinoid system is present in the brain and in the nervous system extensively. So the endocannabinoid system is there for homeostasis, for bringing the body into balance. So, if we can improve that, there's certainly theoretical benefit there. Definitely people with Alzheimer's and that kind of thing, I would be really careful with THC use, because, that could certainly exacerbate, confusion and, medical problems. But that being said, it can still stimulate appetite. Appetite is one of the big things, that they struggle with.
Absolutely. I have some experience with that, because I took care of my elderly mother for the last few years of her life. And she was in the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico, as I am as well. And I started her off like with 1 milligram of fecal oil, and eventually worked her way up to about 30 to 35 milligrams a day. And it took a lot of agitation off. Okay, of course, my mother, who was married to a musician for 50 years, she even with some of the best cannabis that one could smoke, or take, she would never admit to being high. Okay, and even at the 35 milligram a day, she didn't admit to that. But it did make her less anxious. It took a lot of that anxiety and stuff away. And I think it was. Well,
I think you did it the right way. Starting low and going up slowly, because that could be a big mistake, and it could turn people off very, very easily. But absolutely. I think the calming effects are pretty apparent, and anxiety and agitation are huge problems in patients with Alzheimer's. So anything you can do to make these patients more comfortable and more at ease is going to be helpful for not only them but their caregivers as well. It is a huge burden.
So just to wrap things up, is there anything else in regard to your practice and cannabis in general that you'd like to tell us about today?
Just so my practice, like I was saying, is a holistic medicine practice. I do a lot of what we call functional medicine, which really looks at the complete person, to really trying to figure out what is driving inflammation in that person, whether it's diet, fluids, hydration, your microbiome, the organisms in your gut, and micronutrient deficiencies, and really trying to develop specific nutrition plans, exercise plans. I do a lot of mind-body medicine, meditation, tai chi, yoga, those kinds of things. And cannabis can be, helpful in reducing, because we know how much it reduces inflammation. And inflammation is the biggest driver of chronic disease. Everything from, Alzheimer's, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all are inflammatory conditions. Autoimmune disease is another big one, and cannabis has been helpful in all of those.
I'm a heart patient since 1983. I was living in Los Angeles, right near UCLA Hospital, actually, and I had a myocardial infarction, however you say that. I had a little
an
heart,
MI.
an MI, in 1983. I was smoking cannabis at that time, and after I recovered, I went back to smoking cannabis again. Within a few weeks of my heart attack, and at some point in time, I ended up calling UCLA and speaking to a department that was actually doing some cannabis research, and I told them that I really feel that cannabis can be helpful to heart patients, and especially sedentary heart patients who maybe were unable to exercise, because it does raise your heart rate a little bit and help the blood flow through the arteries and so forth. So that was like 30-something years ago. And of course, there are studies now that say that this really could be a great medicine for heart patients. If you think you're having a heart attack, maybe taking some fico oil is neuroprotective and all kinds of stuff. So we're learning every day. You're learning as a physician, and also physicians need to be educated. Being a cannabis a physician that knows about cannabis, there's lots of space out there for you to educate other physicians.
Absolutely. In fact, and that's something that I do. Actually, I have a physicians group that I meet monthly with, and I give talks about cannabis to teach other doctors, because there is patients want to know, and so many. What I'm seeing more and more from my patients is my doctor was receptive, to it, but he didn't really know much about it.
Yes.
That's
so common. So common in every state. Every state. There's no doubt about that. So I want to thank you for coming on today. This is
my pleasure.
Dr. Scott Jacobson, and you can go to his website. It's wishingwellnessmedical.com. Do you do any doctoring?
So I do some. I'm only licensed in Nevada and Florida. So by law, the patient needs to be in one of those states for me to establish care. But if anybody's in Nevada, they can establish care with me in person and then do teleconferencing after that. You can also follow me on Facebook, Wishing Wellness Medical, as well as Instagram, both Wishing Wellness Medical and Dr. Chi MD, which is my food blog. I talk about food there, and lots of other great information on both of those sites.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time today to speak with me. If you make any new discoveries or anything you want to talk about, get in touch with me. We'll get you back on again. Again, that's wishingwellnessmedical.com. Dr. Scott Jacobson, thank you for being on Medical Marijuana Radio today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this.
Prescribing your pleasure from dusk till dawn. Rock and Roll Doctor is always on.
Okay, Rock and Roll Doctor, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yeah, you want to turn your radio down, sir? You want to turn your radio down, please?
Yeah, I'm going to the Aerosmith concert, man, and I was wondering what kind of drugs I should take.
Okay, Aerosmith, that's heavy metal. You're going to want to stay away from stimulants. They react negatively with the high decibels. When those guitars start feeding back, you're going to be clawing your face off. I suggest rather a mild depressant, beer, maybe some Quaaludes.
All right, man. You got any?
No, I don't. I'd like to point out right here, the Rock and Roll Doctor does not advocate drugs or just prescribe them. Okay, Rock and Roll Doctor, you're on the air. Yeah. Are you having a bad trip, sir? Is that what
too much.
Yeah, okay. Well, you want the hotline. This is the Rock and Roll Doctor. Next, please try to dial carefully, people, okay? It's very important. Rock and Roll Doctor, you're on the air.
Did you see Quadrophenia, man?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should, man. It's really good. It's got all this Who music in it, man. Really good.
Yeah, okay. Well, you have a question here?
Right. Well, it's about the mods, They're like early hippies in England, but they're not hippies. They ride around on mopeds, you know. And
you want to get to the point, please.
Yeah. Well, the mods are like always taking these pills. They're called blues, man. I've never heard of blues, man. Like, what are these blues?
As far as I'm concerned, it's Negro music. Blue is not really a good drug color. I suggest try reds instead. Okay, Rock and Roll Doctor, you're on the air.
Yes, my sister and I are going to the new Christy Minstrel show at the Playhouse tonight, and I was wondering what I should take.
A good book. Okay, Rock and Roll Doctor, you're on the air.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, turn your radio down, please. You want to turn your radio down, please, sir?
What?
Turn your radio...
Yeah.
Right, okay. That's better. You have a question, sir?
Yeah, I'm going to the Nugent concert.
Kind of figured.
Well, I'm taking some pot and some acid, and I'm going to be taking some Coke, and I'm going to be taking a couple of quarts of rum. I was wondering if there's anything else
else that I should take?
Yeah, an ambulance. Rock and roll doctor, you're on the air.
Rock and roll doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had these, pills, and I took them, I think, and, like, do you know what they were, man?
No, I don't.
Oh, wow. Well, I was just wondering, like, who is this?
This is the rock and roll doctor. Why don't you lie down for a couple of days, do us both a favor, you'll feel a whole lot better. People, when you call in, try to have a question in mind, okay? It just makes the show move a whole lot faster. Rock and roll doctor, you're on the air.
Yeah, you had a call a moment ago. It sounded like my son. Well, you tell that lousy punk that if I catch him taking any more drugs, I'll clobber him.
Okay, you want to calm down, sir? You sound a bit upset.
Well, you're damn right I'm upset. I think I got good reason to be upset.
Okay, well, you're on your way to a heart attack, sir, or an ulcer at the very least. I suggest you take a couple Valium and relax.
I don't have any Valium.
Okay, well, just stay on the line. I'll get your name and I'll send you a prescription, okay?
Yeah? Hey, thanks.
Okay, no problem. Rock and roll doctor, you're on the air.
Hello.
Goodbye. Rock and roll doctor, you're on the air.
Yeah, this is Detective Johnson of the Drug Enforcement Agency. Doctor, perhaps you'd like...
Okay, that's just about all the time we have for calls right now. We're going to break, take a word from our sponsor, and be back with Timothy Leary.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Scott Jacobson. Check him out if you are in Nevada. It sounds like if you establish a relationship with him, then you can do some telemedicine. That's what it sounded like to me, so check it out. I also would like to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you're a doctor and you'd like to come on the show and tell us about your experiences with your patients, it's info@medicalmarijuanaradio.com, or MMJRadio.com is shorter. Also, if you have a story to tell, a product to sell, you're an advocate, an activist, info@MMJRadio.com. What else? Oh, if you want to hear some of our old shows, we've done over 400 shows. You can go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. On CannabisTube.net, we have a channel. Also, on Spreaker and iHeartRadio, you can hear us on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Also on Now TV, channel 937. And coming soon to the Canna channel near you.
Medical marijuana.
Shalabah. Shalom.
Sleep well. Peace, love, peace, and love. Chaos where it needs to be. Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.
Bapu buyeta, shuyeta ba, bapu deni, sa bapu 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 bapu.